So thank you for joining us today. We will be walking through how to take your Pyomo model from research to production with DecisionOps using Nextmv. Our presenter today is Nicole Misek, and I'm Renuka Goff. I will be your host for this session. We'll do a quick overview of Nextmv and DecisionOps to get started, and then we'll dive right into the demo. We'll do our best to save time at the end for general Q&A, but we encourage you to please ask questions in real time in the chat. We have next movers on the call who are happy to help answer any questions you have. Like I mentioned, Nicole is going to be walking through a demo today. You're welcome to follow along live or just watch and enjoy, and then we will send all of the resources to you afterward. As we have a few prerequisites for that. Again, the first is creating a free Nextmv account. And there is a full guide that we'll share as well in the Zoom chat, so you can see every step that Nicole is doing along the way. Okay, so while you're getting your Nextmv account set up, let's talk quickly about DecisionOps. So DecisionOps is like MLOps, just for optimization. So we're bringing that same standardization and transparency to decision science. Nextmv is a DecisionOps platform, and it integrates with popular optimization tech, such as Pyomo, which we will be highlighting today. So where does Nextmv fit? Nextmv is the speed and trust layer for all of your decision models. And these layers are really built using observability, experimentation, orchestration, and collaboration, which help you build a fast and repeatable pipeline that engages your team as well as the other stakeholders at your organization. So while Nicole will be giving us a full view into the Nextmv platform and UI, I wanted to give you a sneak peek at what we'll be seeing before she jumps in. So once your model is connected to Nextmv as a decision app, you can get access to the full run history of your model, including the details of each run, like input, output, and statistics all in one place. And you can also perform experiments like scenario tests, which Nicole will be walking through just momentarily. And you can share those results directly with stakeholders just by sharing a deep link from the console. And Nextmv also allows you to orchestrate your optimization pipeline with workflows. There's some examples on this slide here. And they really link your models together and handle steps like fetching data and creating visualization. And of course, DecisionOps is better together. So you can easily invite your teammates so you can collaborate, see a system of record. You can look at the run details, experiment results. You can look at custom visualizations and more. And now on to the demo/workshop that we've got for today. So by the end of this session, what we'll have is a custom Pyomo model that's running on Nextmv and accessible via API endpoints. We'll walk through how to create configurable options and custom statistics for that model, and we'll use those to create scenario tests with shareable results. And of course, throughout this whole process, what we're really creating is a system of record for your model. So you can see model changes, you can see the run history, logs, etc. So how will we get there today? Nicole's going to walk us through 3 steps, kind of a crawl, walk, run approach. For the first step, we're simply running the files that we're downloading from Pyomo with no changes, just to make sure it works on your machine. The second step, or like the walk step, will be turning that Pyomo model into a decision app on Nextmv. So you'll see Nicole make a few changes there to help organize the model into a structure that's prepared for DecisionOps. And lastly, we will be wiring up options in the code. So you'll see Nicole make a few changes in the code. And that's really to allow us to create configurable options that we can tinker with in the UI for model runs and experimentation. The model that we're working with today, I'm sure many of you have heard of it. It's the diet problem example. The objective is to minimize total cost of food while satisfying daily nutritional requirements. And at the end, when we're doing a scenario test, what we'll be looking at is how does changing a constraint such as limiting dairy impact our total cost? And we'll also look at what that cost looks like if we swap out solvers. So that'll be another configurable option for us. And that will all look like this in the UI. So after we make a few code changes that Nicole walks us through, we will be able to set up a scenario test that looks exactly like this, where we'll be able to choose between which solvers we want to use for the test, as well as toggle different constraints on and off. As I mentioned, the guide link should be in the chat. Feel free to follow along while Nicole is walking through, but also know that this is available to you after the session, and you'll have access to walk through those steps yourself. Again, step one is signing up for a free account. So that's cloud.nextmove.io/sign up. The first step I'll kind of dive into the demo here is to download these Pyomo project files. Again, feel free to do this now or wait until afterwards. We'll share the recording so you can follow along. But those files are available in both GitHub and Google Drive for you to download. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Nicole.
Thanks, Renu. I will go ahead and share my screen. All right, so we're working off of this Notion page now. And for those following along at this point, you've hopefully gone through the prerequisites to create the Nextmove account, verify your account, follow the link to get the free trial of the Innovator plan. And the only other prerequisite is to have Python and pip installed. So now we are ready to grab the files if you haven't already. Again, you can get them from either downloading or cloning from the GitHub repo, or you can download them directly from Google Drive. And once you have those files, you're putting them in a directory. For example, you can call it Pyomo example, and then you can CD into that directory from your terminal. So now we're ready to go on to step 2, which is to install the requirements that we need to run this application or this model locally. So I'm going to copy over this pip install command and go into my terminal and pip install the requirements. And so what this is doing is it's installing Pyomo and HighsPy. HighsPy is needed because they bundle up the Highs solver as part of their Python package. So we're using that to run with the Highs solver. Okay, and so now that we've installed our requirements, we're ready to move on to step 3, which is to run this model locally. This is the crawl step that Renu mentioned before, of just getting it running on your machine locally. Be mindful of your Python setup. You may need to use Python 3 and pip3 for these commands, depending on how you set up your environment. Okay, so I'm going to run that, and we can see that the model has solved. And the objective value is 1505, which means $15.05 was spent on these food items. All right. So we got that running locally. So now we're ready to take this local model that just lives on our machines and push that up to Nextmove as a managed application. So the first step to do that is to get your API key from the Nextmove web UI. And so you're going to follow these steps to go into the settings in that blue banner at the top of your account, go into API keys, and then you'll see your API key. So I can show you what that looks like. Oops. All right, so we can go in here to settings, API keys, and you'll see this little copy button to copy your API key over. And then you're going to go into the terminal, and you're going to, on a Mac, you'll run Nextmove export Nextmove API key equals, and then you'll paste in your API key here, just like we demonstrate in the Notion page. For Windows users, it's a slightly different command to export your API key. So again, depending on what machine you're running on, you might use one or the other of these. So I've already done that. So I'm just going to clear that. And so now we're ready to configure our application for the Nextmv environment. So we're on step 2 here, which is to create a file called app.yaml within the same directory as the other 4 files that you've downloaded. And we're going to copy over the contents of this YAML code block. And we'll create that file called app.yaml and paste the contents of that code block in here and make sure to save it. And so now let's talk about what this is doing. So this app manifest is really configuration to tell Nextmv how to bundle up this app and push it to Nextmv, and also how to run it when it's there. And so here we're saying this is a Python application. It's running on the Pyomo runtime. We're using a Pyomo runtime here just because it has some solvers pre-installed on there for convenience. This is saying to bundle up the requirements from your requirements.txt file when you're pushing it up. There are 2 Python files that belong to this app. And then this is some boilerplate configuration kind of for how to read your input and write your output. All right. And so that's really it to Nextmovify your local model to be able to push it up. So now we're ready to push it up. And to do that, we're going to go to step 3 and we're going to pip install Nextmv. We have a -- upgrade here because some of you might already have this. I know I do. So we'll go ahead and install Nextmv. And now we're ready to drop this Python code block into a file called push.py. And so I will talk about what's happening in a moment, but let's go over to our directory and we're going to create another file in here called push.py. And then we'll drop that in and save. And so what this is doing is it's grabbing our API key from our environment variable that we created already. It's setting up a client with Nextmv, and then it's checking, it's either creating an app called Pyomo example or checking if it already exists and just referencing that one. And then here is the step where we're saying grab the app directory that we're in, and most importantly, push that directory up to the Nextmv application. All right, so now we can go ahead and execute that push script by copying over step 5. And you'll see that that's now working. So it's spending most of the time on bundling up those dependencies from our requirements file. And then it's going to push up everything as an artifact to Nextmv so that we can run this remotely in the Nextmv cloud environment. So as this is running, it will hopefully give people a chance to kind of catch up if people are following along. Again, feel free to ask any questions if you have them. All right, so that completed, and now we can see that we have an endpoint on the Nextmv cloud environment where we've just taken our local files from our local model and pushed that up to Nextmv. So now we're ready to visit the Nextmv web UI again, and we can make a run of this application. So we can go over here. And so now we're in our app page, the Pyomo diet app. You can navigate here by going to apps and workflows. I have a bunch of apps and workflows, so my account is a little messy. So I'm just already clicked into this particular application, and you can do the same. You will see that you'll have recently pushed up to this application. And so to make a run, you can do that in a number of ways. One of those ways is you can click on this new run button at the bottom here. And you're going to go ahead and upload the diet.dat file. So we're uploading this file here. This is the input to the diet problem. So I'm going to do that. All right, so I've uploaded that file. You can leave instance set to latest. This is just saying use the latest version of the model app that I just pushed up. And then we're going to start run. And so you can see here, there's no run configuration summary. And now that the run succeeded, there's also not any metrics. That's because we didn't yet expose these. This is part of that crawl, walk, run. Now we're at the walk step where we have created an application, we've pushed it up. Now we have our output and input that we can always reference. We have our metadata about that run, and we have any logs that were printed. And so in this case, this is the highs solver logs that get stored as logs in the Nextmv console because they were printed. So now we have that run observability. We can go to our run history and we can see any runs that we've created. And we have instance and version management to be able to version that particular model as we make changes to it, and instances where we can attach versions to a particular instance and run with that instance, which for today, we're really just running with latest. So let's go back over to the Notion page. So now let's unlock that last piece, which is configurable options and experiments. And so to do this, we are going to add one additional dependency to our requirements.txt file, which is Nextmv. This is not actually required, but the Nextmv Python SDK does have a lot of helper functions for exposing configurable options and metrics. So we're just going to demonstrate using that today. So we'll go into our requirements, and we're going to add Nextmv here and make sure to save that. And now we're going to update our app manifest. There's only a few lines of code that changed here, but it's just easier for you to copy the entire contents of this app manifest and replace everything in your existing app manifest with that. Make sure to save it. And now let's talk about what actually changed. So everything up from lines 1 through 23 is the same as what you had before. But what we did add here is this options with items for the different options that we're exposing to that application. And so the first option that we're exposing is solver. It's a string. We're defaulting to using the highs solver. It can take on the values of skip or highs. And we're exposing this as a select drop-down menu to the web UI. We're also exposing another option called limit dairy. And this is a Boolean. We're defaulting to false, so not limiting dairy. And we're exposing this to the web UI as a toggle for true or false. So now we are at step 3 here, where we're going to update the diet.py file to add the dairy constraint. So again, there's only a couple of lines that changed here, but instead of making you find where to make the changes, you can just copy the entire diet.py file and replace everything in your existing diet.py file. and make sure to save that. And then you'll see that actually there's only a few things that changed at the bottom here. This is us really just defining that limit dairy constraint so that we can then put it behind a toggle to turn it off or on. So that's all that's happening here. Oops. And so now on step 4, we're going to update our main.py. So again, copy all the contents from this main, and then let's talk about the couple of things that changed here. All right, so first off, we added these 2 lines at the top of our main. So what this is doing is it's loading our app manifest that we created in that app.yaml file, and then it's extracting those options that we created here. And that way we can actually use these options and wire them up in the model so that the model responds to the user-defined option input. And so now let's wire them up. So here on lines 24 and 25, we're basically checking the user-defined input option to see if limit dairy is set to true or false. If it's true, we're going to add the dairy constraint. And then here, instead of hard coding this to use the high solver, we are using the user-defined solver option to define which solver to use. And then the last change is that we're adding this entirely new code block to expose statistics or metrics to Nextmv. And so we think of these as really your business KPIs. They can also be more like solver specific KPIs. And really, this is anything that you want to track about your model. And so in this case, we expose some very simplistic ones for the number of variables and the number of constraints for this particular problem. But our users have tons and tons of KPIs listed out here because they're really important for running experiments on the platform. We've also exposed the objective value of the solve here. And we are just printing that to, writing that to a file called statistics.json, which is where we said we would be writing statistics to in our app manifest. All right, and now we're ready to push this up. So we'll run the Python push again. All right, and while that's going, I'm going to quickly just show you one more thing. So you may have seen here that in the app manifest, we also have this notion of assets and writing assets to a file. We're not going to have time to cover assets today, but I did want to show you an example from a previous tech talk that we did with Ample. If you do write assets to a file, we will pick that up as long as it conforms to our convention, and we will render that in the console. So in this case, this is a visual asset. And here's another one for, this is looking at the mix of power generators turned on in the optimization. And so this is just a really nice additional thing to expose to your users is those custom visualizations. All right. Okay, and so we see that that completed again. So let's see what's next here. So now we're going to go back into our Pyomo example application, and we're going to make 2 runs. So first, let's go into new run. We're going to browse for our diet.dat input again. And so that's uploaded. We're going to still stick with latest because we just pushed up those changes. But now you can see under options, we actually have something to interact with here because we exposed them in our app manifest. So we have a solver dropdown for highs or skip, and we have an option to limit dairy, which we can turn on or off. So I'm going to leave the default settings, and I am going to start this run. And now you can see that we have run configuration summary, which is really helpful for reproducibility, where you can always see what configuration options you ran a particular run with. And we also have metrics because we exposed these in our underlying model code as metrics or statistics. And so now they will be picked up by runs and they'll be picked up by experiments. So now what we can do is click this little plus sign up here and we can clone this run. So this just takes the existing input file that you ran with and all of your settings, and it just clones them. And now I can go and change this, and let's run with skip and limiting dairy. And so that is going to complete in a moment. All right, so now we have a few runs under our belt. So let's move on to part 4, which is to perform a scenario test. So what we're going to do is follow the instructions for step 1 here to create a managed input set that we can use for our experiment. So we will go into experiments, input sets, create a new input set. Let's call this my sample input. And you can put a description if you'd like. And then under create type, we're going to just, there are a number of ways to create inputs, including uploading the files. What we're going to do is select instance and date range. Since we made a few runs on our latest instance, let's leave it as latest. And let's just grab the last 24 hours of runs. So I have 6 files in mine. You'll probably have 3. All right. And so now that we've done that, we're going to create a scenario test where we vary limiting the dairy constraint, and we can also vary which solver to use, whether we're using highs or skip. So let's go in and do that. So under scenario, you can click the plus sign next to scenario, and we can say my scenario test. And then under the input set, you can select the input that you just created. And under instance, you can select latest. And under configuration, we can click this little plus sign. And then that creates another dropdown. So let's select one as highs and one as skip. And then under limit dairy, we can click this little plus sign to create another toggle. And let's try with limiting dairy off and also on. And so I grabbed one of my old input sets that had 3 inputs in it. And so you can see here, we have 4 option sets that are coming out of this, the 2 solver options and the 2 limit dairy options. And so 4 times the 3 inputs is equal to 12 runs. And you can fire that off. And that will just complete in a moment. So it's basically fanning out and running all 12 of those runs concurrently. And when this completes, we'll get a nice interactive pivot table. So I can pull things out of the pivot table. I can select from my statistics here. And so let's look at our findings from this. So what we can see is that the solver actually doesn't matter because this is a toy problem. So using highs or skip doesn't make a difference. What does make a difference is whether we're adding that limit dairy constraint, whether it's false or true. If it's false, the cost is less than if we're limiting dairy. We have to pay more for the food items. All right, so that is the workshop. I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back over to Renu to close us out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nicole. Okay, so we walked through quite a bit there. What just happened? So we saw that Nicole turn a Pyomo model that was just running locally on her machine into a scalable decision app that was running on Nextmv and accessible via API endpoints. She performed a scenario test, and in that test, the options that she had wired up in the code were able to be configured directly in the UI, so she could change those per run or per scenario, as we saw. And lastly, overall, really what we're seeing here is that she's now created a shared space for her team to collaborate. So any of those runs that she was showing, the input, the output, the custom visualizations, those can all be shared directly with her teammates via the Nextmv UI. All right, I know we're at time. I'd love to squeeze in a question about data, Nicole, to you. There was a question that came directly to us. Does my data need to be in a single input file? What if I have 10 inputs?
Oh, no. So actually, what we did is we set up the app manifest to have a content type of multi-file. And so this scales out to multiple input files and multiple output files. So it's actually really flexible in that sense.
Wonderful. And then just a quick follow-up question was, can I connect to any data sources?
You can, yes. So all of our execution classes are able to make outside network calls. So you can, as long as you configure any secrets using a Nextmove secrets collection, you can either connect to your data sources through an app or with a workflow, which we didn't yet talk about. But that's either of those are options available.
Wonderful. And yeah, I think we can send some materials on workflows out in the email as well. Great questions. Okay, so what's next? Once you've signed up for a Nextmove account and followed the guide that Nicole kind of walked through today, you can invite teammates to your Nextmove team so they can kind of collaborate with you. Of course, we just shared a very small example model today, but you can bring your own model or connect your own model. So that way you can have increased observability and all kind of collaborate in that shared space together. If you'd like to see more, I know this was a very quick 30-minute session. You can request a private workshop. We're happy to do that for you and your team and have something that's a little bit more specialized to the projects that you're working on. And lastly, if you have any additional questions, if there were things we didn't get to today, questions that may have come in a little later, we will make sure to address those in an email to you. So don't worry about that. But if you'd like to get some live answers from us, we will be hosting some open office hour sessions next week. So keep an eye out for that in the email from us as well. It will include a Zoom link to join, and you can come and bring your questions specifically about Nextmove or kind of connecting your model to Nextmove. So that's all we have for today. I really want to thank you for joining us today and walking through this with us. Again, all of the materials, the guide, the code that Nicole walked through, as well as any additional resources will all be emailed to you, including the recording. So we hope that you enjoyed the session today, and we can't wait to see you next time. Thank you.